Tell me what the hell are you scared of when in the end the only
Where's the love? Right here on this podcast. Welcome to Love Drops, where your hosts and One Love ambassadors, Charles and Diane, will share love, hope, and inspirational topics taken from their journey and world events. We will also include on-location recordings and special pop-up guests from cool places all around the world. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
whether big or small, love never fails. Oh, love it conquers all. Love never fails.
Welcome to this edition of Love Drop Podcast. I'm so excited for our guest today. We have with us Valerie Probstfeld, and she was introduced by a dear friend, Brian Bashad, and we're going to just jump right in. So I'll give you an introduction on Valerie. Valerie is an author, nurse practitioner, founder of To Mom is to Love. She's a flutist and keynote speaker with a master's degree from Yale University. Her professional background spans pediatric, neurology, and primary care. Valerie is the podcast host of To Mom is to Love and an advocate for mental health and wellness. With all of that said, I am excited to bring Valerie to the mic. Valerie, thank you for your yes and welcome to the Love Drop Podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Diane. It's an absolute pleasure. I am so thrilled to be here today. And thank you for all that you're doing and all the incredible work and stories you share through Love Drops podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Valerie, where are you in the world?
I am in Chicago, Illinois right now.
So how's the weather?
It's beautiful now in the summer. In January, you can ask me how the weather is and I'll have a completely different answer.
I bet. I'm telling you, Valerie, I love technology, right? We're right now in Lyon, France. You are in Chicago, Illinois, and together we're here on the stage of Love Drop virtual podcast platform. So, yes, I am so excited to dive into our topic. We're going to take that journey to Mom is to Love. And so, let's talk about that a bit, Valerie. Where did that concept come from?
Well, thank you so much. I feel like that concept so much came from the paradigm shift that I had once I became a mom. Prior to becoming a mom, I thought I was going to be an A-plus mom. Like I was going to rock it. I have, experience in pediatrics. I knew I wasn't going to be like how my mom was. My mom yelled too much. She always had an angry face. She was always yelling. And I just knew I was like, when I become a mom, I'm going to do it totally different. And I know all this, I have all this knowledge of kids and of families, all this stuff, this book knowledge. And so I'm going to rock it. But within, Diane, 10 minutes of my first being born, she was taken to the NICU and I didn't study for that. I was completely blindsided. I was like, I thought I was going to be this A-plus mom. I have no idea, like all the studying that I didn't prepare me for that. It didn't prepare me for the emotions that I experienced, regardless of, her being in the NICU or not. Like there's just so many emotions we have once we become a mom. And I think like some of the anger, to be honest, that I was experiencing that I didn't realize I was experiencing because I couldn't see my baby. I was frustrated with staff. I was so far from perfect. The control that I thought I had, the illusion, like washed away within a second. And within that week, I did so much kind of writing and journaling because for me, that's always been therapeutic to just get what's in my head out on paper. And for no other reason other than that, just I needed to get it out. So I, was writing. And I remember that whole week we were in the NICU, the staff were constantly coming in and calling me mom. It was interesting because like when I came to the hospital, they all were saying my name. And then it was this immediate, transition of mom, we need this for your baby. Mom, do this with your baby. And mom or mother is a beautiful name. I love the name. I wanted to be a mom my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it was like, I feel like I filled out a different birth certificate, not only for my baby, but for myself. And now I am mom. So what does mom mean? So I started kind of like looking that up, journaling it with like free writing. And I looked up the definition of mother, and I was so surprised, Diane, because mother is not just a title. It's not just a noun. According to Merriam-Webster, mother can also be a verb, to mother.
Mm-hmm.
And to mother means, according to Merriam-Webster, to give birth or allow one to rise, care for, or protect. And when you think about it, what gives birth, what allows one to rise, care for, or protect? And that's love. Love does those things. And I may not be able to control, what my expectations are as a mother, the fact that I'm not an A+ mom, I thought I was going to be, the fact that, society expects me to be whatever a mom we are supposed to be in society, but I can control my verb. I can control this moment right now. I can choose love over fear. I can choose a different back road. I can choose, like, if I'm frustrated right now, I can recognize that and choose to respond differently. Now, this took so much like inner work.
Absolutely. I want to circle back to your first realization of becoming a mom. A couple of things that you mentioned here. And the first is, where did these extra emotions come from? Because as you are preparing, like when my first was born, it was that big Dr. Spock crave, right? So you got the checklist and you're doing all this preparation. And then the baby is born and all these extra emotions are not on a checklist. So I feel you there. That's number one. Number two, when they take your baby away to the NICU, that's not on the list either. My baby was taken to the NICU for jaundice, right? So that was not on the checklist. We're supposed to be breastfeeding, latching on, and just all of this and that. And so now you got this other dynamic into that. And then I love how you said the transformation of your identity, because you're no longer Valerie, but you are now mom. And yeah, you couldn't wait to be called mom, but you quickly realize that Valerie is kind of shrinking under mom, because that's a new identity. And I love how you put it with a new birth certificate for yourself, because now you're mom. So I love how you brought that all out. And I really and truly love how you just brought out about mother and, to be a mother. So, and how you made the analogy with that in love. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So thank you. So let's continue.
Thank you so much, Diane. I really appreciate that. Absolutely. Yeah, it was such a paradigm shift. And I really felt like, as the days, as the months, as the years went on, I tried to work on these emotions. Like, I tried to work on what was not in like the guidebook or the studying manual. It was not there. So how do I work through this? So I thought I was doing a good job. But one day, my baby, who was then 2, there was a camera going because we had a new nanny. She was great, but I was, just like, oh, let me have a camera. I'm worried, so that was going on in the background. I didn't realize it was still going. And my daughter came up to me and she said, Mom, I hate how you yell so much. I hate your angry face. And she was so verbose for a 2-year-old, but that just like was a gut punch to me, because I clearly remember hating that about my mom. I hated that. And I was like, surely I am not as bad as my mom. And like, so, but as a flutist, I'm used to assessing my performances in a sense. So I'm like, you know what, that camera is still going. And when I scolded her, it was because I scolded her. I don't remember what it was for. It was something, she wasn't listening or whatever. I'm like, let me see what it is. And Diane, it was so eye-opening that I sounded just like my mom. And
Mm-hmm.
I was in shock because like in my head, that is not what I sounded like at all. And that's like, I had all this rationale for why, I raised my voice because she wasn't listening and I told her 10 times or whatever it was. But all my daughter saw was that angry face, was mom yelling, and she yells too much. I really wanted, at that moment, I think was when I'm like, I need to work on this more. I need to take what I have studied, through understanding with the brain, like there is a way. There's the growth mindset. I can easily kind of say, feel shame for that. And I did. But at the same time, what do I do with that? I can grow, I can learn. We're all learning. My daughter was learning how to do her developmental tasks. So here I am, stunted in that, but I can grow. And we're growing together in what that is. So I am going to try to take mental back roads. Viktor Frankl, he is a Holocaust survivor, famous psychologist. He says, between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space lies our freedom to choose, as well as our growth and our freedom.
I love
And
that.
isn't that beautiful? I don't know if
Yes.
I said it exactly the way it was, but it essentially is that. And it
Mm-hmm.
lies our growth and our freedom. And between stimulus, reacting, and response, calmly responding, there's that space. And how can I lengthen that space? Like if we're running late, how can I take that pause instead of saying, get in the car, blah. How can I take that pause, lengthen that space, and take a mental back road? I may have a mental highway to yell because that's what I grew up with. That's all I know, really.
Mm-hmm.
But I do know differently. I do know how I felt as a child, and I want to do it differently. With my mom didn't necessarily have those tools, but now I see it from a different perspective, and I can use these tools and cultivate them in a way that I'm practicing on myself. And that was a big thing of why I wanted to write my book, because not only did I want to help other people, but I also wanted to, it was like I was the patient, like in a sense
Yeah.
where I had like a patient diary almost, like we say,
Mm-hmm.
it's like how often does it occur? Blah, blah. So I would
Yeah.
say like a skunk came and sprayed my dog. Like I remember like in one chapter I talked about that and I remember writing this before it became a book. I was like, okay, I'm working on gratitude right now. That is this mental back road I want to work on. Instead of yelling, instead of being annoyed that my entire house smells, it's 5 a.m, my dog by a skunk, my husband's upset that I woke him up and asked him to clean the dog because I don't want to deal with that. I'm researching how do you even clean dogs with skunk smells. Well, let me take this pause and
Right.
choose gratitude in this moment. I wrote a gratitude list. It really changed my perspective. I feel like, we can do these one-off things and say, oh, that was like so amazing. Like I need to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I want to jump in because first of all, I want to just give you kudos for creating a safe space for your 2-year-old to be able to say, hey, mom, I'm not feeling your angry face. And by the way, you yell too much. I mean, kudos, because that is definitely from a place of love and safety. Because even though that's happening, she feels like her voice matters enough and that you would hear her in her opinion and what she had to say. So beautiful. So that's kudos to that first and foremost. And then the second thing is this: the more we try to avoid being our mother, because we all do it. We see the things that our mom did and we're like, okay, so yeah, that's what's not going to happen. I'm not doing this and I'm not doing that. And I'm going to be different and I'm going to be a different kind of mom because you may have gotten all this right, but I'm going to get it all right. And then you look up, you look in the mirror, and there's your mom looking back at you. It's just like sayings, the things that they say, you find yourself speaking that and you look around like, where's my mother? Oh, I said that. And so it is definitely a mindfulness and it's definitely grace, to give yourself grace. And so the fact that you were able to assess and reassess the things that you were doing and the very thing, because at the beginning of the interview, you said, well, one of the things behind it is your mom she yelled too much and she had an angry face. And so, we get to this point, and that's exactly what your baby girl said. I said, Mom, okay, I don't like your angry face and you yell too much. And so to be able to accept that and just make the corrections, that in itself just speaks to me that you are living your message, which is to mom is to love is to mom, or to mom is to love. And you're living that. So I didn't want to get too far without just interjecting that, because it's what we do that our children are learning from. So yeah, please continue.
Oh, thank you so much. That truly means so much. And I completely agree. They're always watching, they're always assessing. And, as a musician, I recently started thinking about this of like, I remember in music school, I would love to play fast. I loved to play fast pieces. It was so much fun. But sometimes some of the hardest things to do was play a slow piece. And I remember a professor in particular, he loved us performing this, in particular, incredibly slow pieces. And I dreaded them at the time because I had to really emphasize each note and how my body looks, how the sound is, and how it crescendos and decrescendos all in one long note. And I think there is so much to be said where you compare that to our days of like, how do we sound? How are we reacting or not reacting? How is our tone, our body presence, and also just slowing down and knowing that each day can be savored. I think we tend to rush so much. And Gretchen Rubin says the days are long, but the years are short. And it's so true. I sometimes will say, our brain is like this fascinating time machine. And, we can travel to the future with worry, and we can travel to the past with rumination or whatever that is. But the only place we can meet our family, our friends, so others,
Mhm.
is present. And it's lonely otherwise. It's a lonely time machine. And that it was these simple things like living in the present. Like it sounds so kind of simple, but at the same time, that is what helped me with reacting less, lengthening my space of how can I be mindful right now? Or maybe how can I be grateful right now for, it's a beautiful day, or looking out at the trees and noticing what nature is teaching us, or how can I share a story right now about, oh, I remember that, or, trying to like just savor the note, savor the day. And it's so hard. It's so hard
Yeah.
sometimes. But I feel like that's what makes beautiful music. And there's so much to be said about the fast, like, the quick pieces, and that's exciting. But at the same time, our days aren't always going to be like that. There's not always going to be excitement in the day to day, especially in like early motherhood or in motherhood or whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
and how can we savor that? And that can at least lengthen my day just a bit more in the days are long, years are short. At least if I'm mindful, I feel like it slows it down maybe a nanosecond more, like I can at least
Absolutely.
breathe it in.
Yes. So this is a good time to pivot into, so we know you had a 2-year-old daughter, but in our conversation, I know that it's more than just that one. So how many children do you have, Valerie?
I have 3 kids. So I have a 5-year-old, 7-year-olds, and 9-year-olds now. And it's so amazing that I learn so much from them. And I feel like each one of them teaches me something. And, like with our brains, like I write a little bit about my son, who he always likes to make like all these different, he likes to build things. And one day I saw all the kids, they went into the holiday closet and they got out the Halloween cobweb decorations. And it was not October. It was like, I don't even know, like 6 months prior to October. So not at all anywhere around Halloween season. But I was like, whatever, I'm going to pick my battles here. And he wanted to like decorate the house with cobwebs. And I remember like in that moment, that was when I was actually writing the book, and I was trying to think of analogies of like, how can I write a visual of what the brain is? And those cobwebs really spoke to me of what my son was doing, because he was so determined to like stick the weaker cobwebs onto like the stairs or onto the fireplace. And there were some really thick webs, like, or like with maybe yelling or whatever that is, that can be a thick highway. And that was so easy to stick. But these little ones that were trying to like be more mindful or, you know, or whatever that is, smile more, those require a bit more effort to stick. So I was like, oh, that's such a cool visual to brains and like to our brains. And I know like with my youngest, it was, I don't know when I was writing the book still, but it was towards the end of when I was writing the book. And I'm like, I have to include this in here because it was a day where I was busy. Like, I think I was writing at that point, editing or whatever it was. And she was like, Mom, you need to play with me. And I was like, okay, I don't really know how to play like in the imaginative way anymore. And I would say like, Mom doesn't know how, like Mom knows how to like flip the Barbie up and down, but I don't know how to do that anymore. And so she's like, well, here's how you do it. And it was unicorn. So I'm like, okay, let me dance and ask. And I really tried to, in the moment, meet her for just a minute with the unicorns.
Mm-hmm.
And then later that day, so it was just like a minute, but later that day, she runs up to me and says, look at the sunset, Mom. It's like the unicorns we played with earlier. And I looked out there and it was like, oh my gosh, like that does look like unicorn manes, like the colors and like the pinks and the oranges. It was just beautiful. And that moment I had with her was all because I slowed down and accepted her invitation just for that moment. And now, like, still to this day, that was like 6 months, maybe 9 months ago now, like she'll still say, oh, look at the unicorns in the sunset, Mom. I always say, like, our kids are always teaching us things, and it's beautiful, you know. And we just sometimes have to slow down enough to hear it, to hear the lesson, and to just play more and be mindful more, you know. And we forget that as adults, I feel like.
I have to interject and say, wow, again, to love is to mom. That's so you, not because what you are saying to me, but because of the stories you're sharing. Your kids feel so safe and just making their needs known. That's a beautiful thing, Valerie. That's a beautiful thing because there are so many kids, not only do they not know how to express themselves, to speak up, but even those that do don't feel like there's a safe space for them to do so. Not my issue as a child, because I spoke up, and so did my kids. But you know, it's something not to be taken for granted because it really is not across the board. There's so many children with so much to say, but they're silent because they don't feel like they have the safe space in which they can express themselves. So I love how not only did your daughter invite you into this imaginary space, but you accepted the invitation. You stopped, you paused, you slowed down enough to accept the invitation. I need to use this space here to say just congratulations to you for just truly living your message. Understand that to mom is to love, and it's not to be perfect, but it's to give yourself grace. You're not going to get it right. And that's a part of the journey. I believe anyone that's a mom that's listening, a grandma, or just a teacher, or anyone that has relationships with children, you know that you're going to drop the ball. At some point, you're not going to get it right. But just understand that it's not about the ball drops. It's how you pick that ball up and keep going. It's how you recover. It's in the recovery. So just from becoming a mom, you come up with the concept to love is to mom, right? To love, help me say this right, because I want to get it right.
To mom is to love.
To mom is to love. Thank you. And so then that begins as a thought, a working thought in your mind, just going over and over. It begins to become journal points, and then it evolves into a book So let's talk about that. Let's talk about that book.
Thank you so much. I truly appreciate that, Diane. It means a lot to me. And with my book, I mean, I started writing it when my NICU baby, when she was in kindergarten, when I started writing it then. And I just would, write down how was I doing, inviting the reader to practice with me. That's a big thing because I felt so alone as in early motherhood, and I wanted that community aspect to kind of shine through in the book, and I wanted the reader to know that they aren't alone. I'm working on this, and that was huge. Wanting me to get it out not as quickly as possible. I wanted it to be thorough and all of that, but at the same time I'm like, well, I want to be in that stage with the reader, and not from like, there's so many, I feel like, books out there that will say, well, here's what I did, or here's, like what the research shows and all. It's like, no, I want to be the reader's friend, and I want to be a mom with them, but like in that moment in time. And so I really tried to make like discussion questions and like thinking about, these mental back roads and how it can relate to the beautiful chaos of motherhood. And when you have literally like a diaper in your chandelier, I had that one time. It was clean at least, but like, how can you be grateful in that moment? Or how can you smile more? I use that as a back road in itself. I identify 6 back roads in the book. Smiling is one because it reminds me of my grandma, and she was a safe space for me. And it really was just a smile. That's what I remember made me feel safe. So how can I think of my grandma when I am speaking, and when I think of her, I smile, and then I continue on that legacy. And, I think with the book, I have on the cover butterflies and sunflowers, and those really speak to me because the monarch butterfly, there's the transformation of a butterfly. Yes, and also they migrate from the north to the south. And it's one butterfly that goes from north to south. It's the same butterfly. But then from south back up north, it's multiple generations. And it's not the same butterfly that gets up north. And I thought that was such a beautiful illustration of generational legacies. And how can I be that southbound monarch changing the legacy? Because otherwise, if I'm not going to be a transition person, we're going to continue the legacy of angry faces and yelling. And I want to have a legacy of love. And that's what I want my legacy to be. So I also, with that, just to kind of give a shout out to my grandma, she's no longer with us, but I feel like she was kind of like my butterfly that I want to continue that legacy as well. And like, I recently visited her grave, and it says just on there, mother. That's all it says. And I just thought that was so beautiful because it's like grandma really lived her verb, and that's what I want to continue that legacy of. And also, I mean, and honoring the imperfections too. Like, this wasn't something to say like, oh, my parents should have done this, or this. It was, how are we learning? And I'm making the same mistakes almost. And like, how do we learn together? And I feel like that's therapeutic in itself too. Like, I think sometimes we can easily like, ignore things that we should be working on, but at the same time, then we aren't growing, we aren't changing, we aren't completing, we aren't being the transition person.
It's a narrative shift, right? And then recognizing it. So it's like, oh, I've inherited the angry face and the yelling, but I don't want my children to inherit that. So what do I do differently? And that's where the shift come in, and that's where the transformation comes in, right? And so that's just beautiful. I love that you wrote your book, with the back end stories. And as you were sharing right now with us, I began to think, 5 is the number of grace. So after we end this podcast, I'm going to go and purchase 5 of your books so I can send it to 5 mothers, because I truly believe to mother is to love. And I believe that when mothers see that they're not alone in, just dropping the ball. However, everybody drops the ball different, but all mothers drop the ball. It's a part of the process. To be a mother, you must drop the ball. So if you don't drop the ball, then you're not doing it right. I'm just saying.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you so much, Diane. That truly means so much. And I completely agree. You're not learning if you're not getting in there and, picking up the ball constantly, dropping the ball, picking it up. And I think that there's so much to be said about embracing imperfection because, like with Japanese pottery, for example, there's this kintsugi where they fill gold into cracked pottery
Yes.
to say there's beauty in that. And that's also, with the sunflowers, I've always identified with those flowers, but also I notice with younger sunflowers, they'll physically, like you can see them dramatically move from but it's interesting because you see that they face the sun, but when they're young, they bend the opposite way to face the sun. And it's like this opposite that growth that you have to get to. And like with tomato plants and vines, it's not stiffness that gets you to the sunlight. It's that resilience, it's that flexibility. Like if you're stiff, you may not grow. And like tomato vines will really show that, that flexibility.
Yes.
And the other thing that is so I think important to share because I really identified with this, especially in like the darker moments when I really was struggling with anxiety in like the early days of like just going outside into nature in the fall leaves and in the seasons. And it's beautiful and green like right now in Chicago. It's the summer, but eventually the days will get shorter. The days are getting shorter. They're going to get colder, and that decreases the chlorophyll production. It decreases the green in the leaves and brings out the inner colors of the yellows and the golds. And how often do we say, oh my gosh, fall is so beautiful? It is. It's so beautiful. And that is from coldness. That is from darkness. And that I think is such a beautiful example that nature gives us that, there is the light and the dark, and how can we grow through that? There's
Yes.
sometimes winter, there's sometimes snow, but spring will come again.
Yes.
And I just want like everyone that's listening to know that like that was so helpful for me, and that was something that I really felt like helped me grow at the same time, to know that there's seasons and there's imperfection, but that's what makes life beautiful. And
I love that. That is wow. That well said. Well said. And thank you so much for that. So as we're wrapping around the corner, there was something you did really meaningful with your book, To Mom is to Love, on yesterday. So I'd love for you to share that with our listeners. Yes.
oh, thank you so much. That was so much fun. I was able to do a book walk. It was local to the Chicago area, but it was so fun. We were able to take a walk, literally talk about mental back roads. And I teamed up with another mom, Mama in Bloom in the Chicagoland area. So definitely check her out if you're local. She has amazing events. It was so fun. And I had all of the people who walked. We talked about mental back roads and kind of what we were talking about in the podcast a bit, but also I wanted people to find a heart shape in nature, shelter, some natural like outdoor shelter, and something that changes in nature. And so we were all kind of looking around to see what those were. And I think that's such a good exercise because first of all, it gets you out of your head and into a different different thought pattern, because you're now searching for something instead of ruminating or worrying or whatever that is. But also to be mindful, to just see the beauty that there is out there. We weren't able to find as many hearts. My daughter, the one who was in the NICU, like we talked about like heart walks a couple of years ago, and there's these walnuts that will make heart shapes, which is so cool. So we go on like heart scavenger hunts.
Mm.
Oh, one of the moms pointed out that the butterfly, which I thought was so beautiful, the butterfly kind of with the wings form a heart. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. And
Yeah.
yeah, the flowing water we talked about with change, and shelter, like just things in nature that provide shelter and safety and warmth. So I love doing events like that and kind of just really not just it being, I want my readers to not only feel like they're not alone with reading the book, but also what can they do as action steps and how can you actually do these mental back roads in real time. So that was so much fun to be able to practice that.
Oh, that is, man, that is so beautiful. And when you were talking about the heart, just locating the heart, it gave me chills because you're so heart centered. I am heart centered. And so the heart, the butterfly transformation, all of these things are just resonating. My listeners, the people who know me, they know that like you're speaking my love language all over the place here. And so, but when you mentioned the heart, it just took me back to when I went alone to the Grand Canyon. It's been about, wow, about 21 years now. And I was speaking to someone today and I was telling them every place I looked into the canyon, I saw heart. So, you know how like you see shapes and things. And so I would move and go to a different location and kind of shake my head and close my eyes and I open up and I see different hearts. So it's so beautiful to hear you, say on this walk that you were looking for hearts because the heart represents love. The heart represents life. The heart represents grace, passion. There's so much that comes from the heart. To mom is to love. That is a heart centered mission. It came from the heart. It was born from the heart. Whew, man. Oh my God. So it's like, with all of that said, I think the first thing that I'll do is I'll ask you, what love drop would you like to leave for our listeners? Let's be specific, even to moms, mom figures. What love drop would you like to leave?
Well, thank you so much, Diane. So beautiful. And I want to say, so love drops. I'm thinking of how can we, fan the flame of love here? How can we do that? And for me, I feel like simplicity is so underrated sometimes. We overrate ease. We want ease in our life, but we don't necessarily say we want simplicity. And love is simple. Love can be a smile. Love can be a hug. Love can be just being present. And that in itself is love. And I think that, understanding that we don't have to do these grandiose things, but sometimes these things like pausing and being grateful when you don't want to be grateful because there's all this stuff going on, or maybe something's happening in your life that's like, it's like, how can I be grateful in this? Those things are hard. That is not easy. But at the same time, the simple things in life, I feel like the more when I lean into that, the more that I choose love over fear in baby steps, that is when I feel the most content, the most with myself, and the most with my family. So I would say simplicity, love is simple. And that's what I would leave with that thought, if that makes sense.
Yes, that absolutely makes a lot of sense. That absolutely makes a lot of sense. I want to thank you so much, Valerie, for taking the time to just be with me here on Love Drop Podcast for our listeners to just really learn more about you, more about your journey, more about to mom is to love. Someone needs to hear that. Every single episode is needed. Someone right now listening needed to hear everything that you said. So, with that said, how can our listeners contact and connect with you and support all the wonderful things you're doing in the world?
Thank you so much. So anyone who's listening can check out my website. My website is tomomistolove.com. From there, you can access my book as well as my podcast, To Mom Is to Love. as well as my social media pages. You can get to them all on there. I'm mostly active on LinkedIn and Instagram. And check out my podcast episodes. I try to really get a bunch of experts on there where we're learning together. And my book is available on Amazon. But again, you can access it all through twomoms2love.com. And I would love for you to connect with me, and we can embrace this journey of imperfection together with love as a verb.
Ooh, thank you so much, so much. And I will leave this with my listeners. I'm truly going out to buy those 5 copies and send them out to moms. And I'm inviting every mom that hears this podcast, go and support Valerie. Go and buy the book. Go support, because it is truly true what they say. It takes a village. It takes a village. And so with that, I thank you for listening to Love Drop Podcast. If it resonates, please share. Please spread the word, subscribe, rate if that resonates for you as well. And Valerie, thank you for your time. It is definitely non-refundable, and I so appreciate this time with you today. So thank you so much for it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Diane. I truly appreciate it. And thank you for all that you're doing. You are doing amazing work. And thank you so much.
Thank you. And as we close out always, I will say one love.
Never a second will I waste, never an opportunity to taste the sweetness of this life.
Thank you for tuning in to the Love Drops podcast. Be sure to follow this podcast and share the love with everyone you know. Until next time, this is Charles and Diane signing off. One love.
Love it conquers all, whether big or small. Love never fails. Oh, love it conquers all. Love never